Hello, everybody. Welcome to the PsionicLeague show with your host, Sean Bond. And today we have a magnificent guest known as Douglas Dietrich. He is a scholar and he used to work for the military document disposal aspect for the Presidial military base.
Yes.
And uh, he is well versed in the cult and secret knowledge and hidden truths in the history that has been destroyed by bureaucracy and replaced with false truths to paint a picture of like, oh, it's all sunny and just trust us kind of thing. And he's now bringing that out and like kind of a whistle blowing it, but like, in a more expanded way, because he is also fairly photographic in his memory. And he brings out such gifts and knowledge to this world. Thank you, and show your love in the comments. Can you add a little bit more to that introduction?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. And I want to thank you. That introduction is very gracious and it's very graceful. I think that what we can do is just kind of go along organically with everything. Obviously, document disposal is a little bit less dignified than document destruction. But I will say this much. I worked the incinerator at the Presidio. I'm sorry?
Incineration is definitely a
Yes,
nice.
yes, yes. I worked the incinerator at the Presidio military base and destroyed an enormous number of documents. Our man, Mr. Sean Bond, says that I have a fairly photographic memory because I did a lot to destroy that photographic memory as much as possible in order to, well, it's not a gift, it's a curse, and it really contributes symptomatically to complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So one of the things that helped me, of course, was my psychiatrist, Dr. Tao Tran, who was magnificent in terms of using highly advanced regressive and also, in a sense, suggestive hypnotherapy. There was a lot of deep hypnosis that was conducted so that I could compartmentalize a lot of the experiences that were uh, providing me particular pain. And along with that, and a lot of basically narcotization, a lot of drinking and drug abuse, I've managed to do some damage quite intentionally to my once photographic memory. However, that being said, I noticed that there's this protective gesture that
Just empathy
Sean,
kind of thing.
that's and I take that as almost a healing gesture. I take it protective and compassionate, and at any rate, that having been done, I still remember quite a bit, and we'll go into those memories, not necessarily of all the painful things that happened at the Presidio or otherwise in my life, but certainly we'll talk about basically my trying to overcome cultural genocide, which is what documents destruction really is. It's a form of cultural genocide. And we'll do that today by going into some fairly deep topics, dark topics, or at least topics that get dismissed quite a bit. And with that having been said, I'm going to let Mr. Sean Bond take over again.
Sure. Yeah, and this warning to people in the love and light community: if you're easily triggered and not very able to handle dark topics and dark truths easily, this show might not be for you. Though, if you're wanting to be brave and doing this, go ahead and hug yourself and cultivate love and loving detachment to a lot of these subjects, because they are quite overwhelming, and hug it and transmute it down and get to release the fear, because fear holds us back, and we need to this kind of stuff needs to be brought out to the world, because it's how we stop more suffering from existing. Dark truths is like, oh, there's a parasite on you, and then there's like, what are you talking about? I don't believe in parasites, and they once they move, if only once a person can accept that dark truth is real, and they can move past, and they can do the thing that it takes to resolve it, so that they don't suffer, and they can remove that out of this reality, making it better. So not saying that we can do that in general for all the things we're going to be bringing that up, but we can at least work towards that in like some interesting psychological back and forth. And
Yes.
so in my background, I used to be very skeptical of a lot of this stuff, and then a huge amount of spiritual stuff happened to me that threw me into not having the option to not believe it, with demons and forced possession, and then learning how to depossess myself, and also depossess others, and healing, and healing pain, and releasing over a distance, and resolving targeted individuals, and a lot of other stuff, tracking back DNA. So I came across these things that we're going to talk about, such as vampirism, and I it was interesting at the time, and I kept getting more data on it when I tracked back in the DNA. And it kind of I got stopped a little bit from being public about it, because I didn't want to create fear about it, and I wasn't I'm not like an arbiter of truth, so I don't want to like make something that will bring more fear or whatever, because I don't particularly believe that just because we believe something, it's going to manifest that. It like takes the whole collective and a lot of other stuff in the background that is happening. But yeah, we have a really grounded perspective here in reality and history, so maybe he can help bring a lot of this awareness to grounding. And I'm not trying to project anything, so let me know what you think on any of the things I also bring up in our back and forth.
I think.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go on. I'm so sorry.
So I tracked back that a fair like 10% of people have like dormant recessant genes for vampirism that have been inherited a long time ago, usually around like something around the fall of what our old civilization would be, around Atlantis or something. There seems to be a bunch of invading forces that came in around that time that introduced a lot of dark programming into our genetics, and from multiple different places, and it's got an interesting history thing, including from other realms. And I liked in your book that oh, by the way, fuck it. The screen. Let's see. Let me just product place this a little bit. Okay. Vampyrology. So Vampyrology by Douglas Dietrich. Totally get it. It's really good. Well compiled awareness of this topic for those out there. He says he's gonna make more.
Thank you.
So
actually, yeah, I'll give
show
details
support. Later. So yeah, anyway, I so like feel free to correct me, and like you don't have to hold anything, hold this on shelves and stuff. I'm willing to whatever. Then I read there's like what the reason I like tapped into this, because I was trying to figure out what were the things that were upending the balance system of Earth, in like why it's a pain in the ass to live here, why we're here in the first place, like a lot of people incarnating to make this place better, all that. So I read that the system of death has been uprooted and unbalanced. Like why do the good die young kind of thing? Why can't you earn life extension in a positive way by like making this world a better place? Why is the dark stealing a lot of authority for this? And I found that they are through a bunch of invasions. They stole a bunch of authority and devoured a bunch of authority holders and founding species, all this kind of stuff. And the death authority is interesting because when I was reading what causes death, it seems like there's a buildup of a type of energy when a person's about to die that I just call death energy. And the dark system likes to summon demons and do deals with them to get this death energy that they're naturally producing if they're doing really dark things to where they need to be rejected or ejected from this game. And they're putting that onto the populace to get it off of them, and including sickness and suffering and other types of things that would be accumulated in natural law. So there's these things that are distributing their suffering to those that don't deserve it, and targeting powerful people like yourself and me that want to make this world a better place, and is putting it onto them to stop us. And so there's like a natural system of death that can be brought back to balance. And if it is, then so I read like a few different things that were upending that, including vampires. I read that there are different types. You can call them a bunch of different things, but based on the DNA lineages I've tracked back, and I read all down for a while ago, 10 types of life extension types of vampire kind of things. The sanguine blood ones that you talk about, the regular people that take adrenochrome, these cannibal ones that are like it's like giants, chi vampires, life force vampires, and there's these five different evolutionary branches of soul eating vampires. And then I read like 60 plus other types of energy stealing parasitic DNA lineages that are passed down to human, but they don't get extension from in life by stealing these things. They just get overpowered in that type of energy. Yeah. So, what can you tell us about what you've uh, what do you since writing this book? What do you believe in the origin of these type of beings are?
Well, there's so many that you brought up that would
Yes,
be
sorry, a lot.
that would essentially be part of the story of the cosmos. But certainly appreciate. First off, let's start off with some qualifiers, as our man Sean Bond did. Sean Bond was giving kind of a forewarning to anybody who is hypersensitive to that which is dark and negative, and of course he also qualified the fact that I am very grounded myself, and I have to deal with a lot of the visceral reality of hostility that's engendered by the fact that what I reveal is dark and negative. So do understand, if you're in the chat room and are in the comments and you want to show your love, that's wonderful. And do communicate with Mr. Bond if we do get the inevitable, which is going to be the gangstalkers and the trolls. And these are the cultists of the kings of Edom, the very dark and anti-natural entities that are not part of this universe. And in a sense, that leads us in to try and explain the cosmology in which Mr. Sean Bond works, the reality that he had to contend with, what almost overwhelmed himself and drew him into a very dark place until he encountered the dragon spirit. And my very surname, Dietrich, of course, is the Germanic word for Dietrich, the dragon. And that, of course, is very similar to the knighted title of Ladislav Sepish, which was Dithrak, or Dracula is a romanization of it, but is actually Ditracula, which simply meant son of the dragon. That was because his father was a sworn knight of the Order of the Dragon, and his father's title was simply Dithrak, or Dracul, in the Slavicization of that name. And so there are many ways to speak that name. Ultimately, it's my surname, and it's a surname that I inherited from the man who raised and guided myself. When it comes to this kind of negativity, confront the fact that if there are gang stalkers and there's trolls in the commentary or the chat, bring them to the attention of Mr. Bond. It will be entirely per his discretion, but honestly, I would say it would be best to simply eliminate those people, because what they do is they leave comments that simply confuse people, they distract people, and they are part of the agenda of chaos and confusion. And ultimately, this is what the anti-gods of the cultists are attempting to sow in this universe. Understand that your universe is a creation that is based on a natural order. And the best way that you can diagrammatically describe this is, as I have done in detail, through HaKabbalah. And that was gifted us many centuries ago, millennia ago, essentially, by the Judaic culture. And the Kabbalah shows the tree of life. And then it centers on earth and goes into the tree of death, which is the mirror image of that tree. But in the center of it all, between the tree of life and death, is Malkuth, the material world, our world. And this is where all the action is. And our world, despite people often denigrating it as material, as if that's a negative, the reality that all of the heavens and all of the hells, the Sephiroth and the Klipoth, they center on this world and have no meaning without this world. They exist so that this world exists, hence the very order of creation. Where these anti-gods come from is not from this tree of life or death. They are not even klipothic. Klipothic would imply demons and devils, and there is a difference. And of course, it must be understood that all of that is part of the natural order. Even though the tree of life represents that which comes out of the earth, the Malkuth, the material world, or our material universe, and the Sephiroth ascend towards the ever finer radiances of the heavens. When we go into the lower vibrations, that extestinal tract of the husks or shells of the Klepoth, those sewers of Seth, those sewers of the devils and demons and the damned, they're absolutely necessary for this cosmic ecosystem to function. Our man Sean Bond brought up, of course, bad things happening to good people, essentially, when he's talking about why do the good die young? Why is it that some people can strive and work and uphold the law and maintain a sense of ethical integrity and never get anywhere, or essentially seem to be punished for it? And whereas other people do what is ill and seem to prosper, seem to thrive, or even be honored and respected for what they do. Aside from other rationalizations such as kalpas and different ages in which this is possible in either the Buddhistic or the Vedic sense, there is simply that eternal cosm sense of the Sephiroth and the Klepoth, the higher and lower vibrations, where all of this is necessary for our universe to work. In other words, understand that for all that you like to see above the ground, those wonderful flowers in your garden, all of the blossoms, all of the that which is above ground that you appreciate in terms of growth, even that which you ultimately eat, the food that you harvest, the grain. Beneath all of that is a seething compost pile of carrion, and it's based on the fecal matter of animals and humans, and oftentimes manure is necessary for the growth of entire harvests that feed humankind. So without that shit, without all of those composting creatures, whether they be worms or that which is far more malignant in nature, uh, that which is above the ground would not be produced. So think of those devils and demons and all the ill that they do as a natural part of the process of what is good in your world. All of this ultimately sources from the divine. That which is evil, which rises up to claim you and pull you under, that is divine. All of this is divine. And understand that just because I'm saying what I say to put devils and demons in their ecosystemic perspective, their context of what they do by being bad is ultimately good. Understand that doesn't make it any safer to play with them. If you were to go outside in some field of manure, or say, for instance, in a poor nation like North Korea, where they still use night soil, human fecal matter in their attempt to raise a harvest. And this results, of course, in the price they pay for that. North Korean escapees, people who have managed to escape, they've been found with very long intestinal worms inside of them. Whenever they manage to break into South Korea, the first thing the South Koreans must do is deworm them and make certain that they can free them of what they've gained from the North Korean diet. If you were to go out and into a playground in a urban setting where people are regularly taking their dogs to shit, and the children are let loose in there and they're playing around these playgrounds and they're exposed to this, they can get ringworm at the very least, or diseases serious enough to render them blind. You don't want to be playing with this sort of thing. So just because devils and demons are doing good in the ultimate sense, it doesn't mean that they're your friend in the intimate sense or in the immediate sense. They are dangerous. They are dirty. They are, however, a necessary part of the ecosystem. And once you understand that and all the ills that befall good people, all of this is the book of Job. All of this is the divine corrupting people, and people who are good. There needs to be an amount of them that fall by the wayside, that ultimately get corrupted, because this is what feeds the legions of the damned, that ultimately are the compost and the carrion that help us thrive in the material world through the ecosystem of the creation. And there's always opportunity in those nether worlds, those lower regions, for redemption, because ultimately it's all recycled. Just as the compost and the carrion die and the blossoms that are produced are comprised of their organic matter, ultimately, or at least their organic matter provides the nutrients, therefore. So too, the damned ultimately recycle, and at some point, which must feel like an eternity to them, they ascend, and that which is ascended also lowers, oftentimes first by materializing, becoming part of the material world, and then ultimately incarnating in the bodily form. And the one thing I can tell you, as a person who's died multiple times, I've suffered clinical deaths many a time in my life, and I've been dead more than once. And I can tell you, from having seen both of those vibratory levels of existence, that the afterlife, in many ways, certainly, even if we think of the higher realms, is not necessarily all it's cracked up to be from your perspective as a human being. In other words, it can get very boring to be in a state of eternal bliss or peace. This is why souls reincarnate. There are people in heaven who cannot wait to reincarnate. They want to come back here because being eternally in Summerland, as the Spiritists used to call it back in the day, the man who raised and guided me, Chief Petty Officer of the United States Navy, George Joseph Henry Dietrich, he was a man who was born in upstate New York. That's where originally the movement of Spiritism started. And these were people who were trying to communicate with the dead. And this was because so many people in World War I lost their children. And it was after World War I that people said, oh my God, so many people had lost so many children, that the movement of Spiritism was born, in which they tried seances to communicate with their lost children. And these people who were attempting that, it was the birth of a new religion. There are still there's still a town in upstate New York where the majority of people are spiritists, practicing spiritists. And the reason I bring that up is not so that you join them or feel a need to, I need to check into this, I want to find out about that. But, all that's fine if you want to investigate that. Understand that I've also heard people having negative experiences because if you try to talk with the dead too much, well, they come into you. And why? Because nothing beats being alive. Nothing really beats being able to physically move yourself, eat, have sex, even void your bowels. It's these things are considered. These are missed. These experiences are missed by people on the other side. Believe me. So there are plenty of people on the other side, even at the higher vibratory levels, who can't wait to get back here and incarnate again. You just understand that it's and for people in the nether regions, it's not necessarily even punishments that are the worst. It's actually missing what you had, the missing what you were able to experience. That can be the worst. That's down there, perhaps even worse than whatever discomforts might be felt at the lower vibratory level. Hopefully that puts this into perspective, because when we think of the anti-gods, of the cultists who ceaselessly attack myself, whether it be in the chat or in the comment section, understand that they are not of this natural tree of life and death. These are people who worship the anti-gods that are extra dimensional, extra stellar, extra cosmic. They are outside of God's creation. These anti-gods are of what is called Rasha, the tree of anti-life, the antimatter universe. And so these are the gods of the failed cosmos prior our perfect creation. And even the devils and demons of our world would stand against them. Understand that. And in that sense, the devils and the demons truly are your friend, your ally. They count on one thing for their existence: you. Without your greed, without your sin, without your lust, without your vile, depraved predations that evolve in so many human beings, the devils and demons of the lower nether worlds, the husks of the Klepoth, would not exist. So ultimately, they would protect you from those anti-gods of the tree of beyond death, the anti-life tree of Rasha. And so this is what needs to be understood in terms of the cosmos that I've learned to deal with. I received a theological education the wrong way, in the same way I received a medical education the wrong way. Received a medical education the wrong way by being a care provider and advocate for my parents in their declining years for over 11 years. And during that 11-year period, I saw it all. When I, of course, earlier before that, was working with the Dr. Colonel Michael Aquino. He, of course, was practicing Satanist originally, and later on became something far worse, an Edomite, a cultist of the anti-gods. And if anyone wonders at the nature of the anti-gods, a hint and nothing more, a flake, a hint, an illusion is provided by Howard Phillips Lovecraft when he speaks of Cthulhu and that pantheon. Those are the anti-gods of Edom. That is a pulp shadow of them, but it is all theologically true. It is mentioned in the Quran that Cthulhu is the great forsaker. Shaitan is Al Cthulhu, the abandoner. Understand that this is quite real, has been recognized by theologies and cosmologies and mythologies for aeons before recorded history. And their cults are alive. And more than anyone else, They seek to character assassinate myself. If they can assassinate my character, they hope that no one will listen to me. But understand what Howard Phillips Lovecraft himself said when he spoke in The Shadow over Innsmouth. That's his longest writ, the only work published in his lifetime while he was alive, that was in book form. He had short stories that were published in his lifetime, but that was the only novella published in hard print as a book, hard copy as a book, hardback cover, that was released. And The Shadow over Innsmouth, within that writ, that novella, Howard Phillips Lovecraft says that elder sign, which holds the anti-gods away, which the only sign which wards them is, that's correct, the Hakenkreuz, the hooked cross, what his character says, what you would call a swastika nowadays. So Zadok is the name of the character that says that, and understand that this is why the Hakenkreuz is so hated, and why there is a mass movement to eliminate it from appearing anywhere, because that way you are left without that ward. You are left without that ability to hold the anti-gods away. That is the death of the conspiracy. It is immense, and it has been here for thousands of years, and they're way ahead of you, and they seek the ultimate destruction of all life in the universe. This is the true enemy. And when it comes to that, what we need to begin to understand about these populations that our man Sean Bond has brought up. You know, these parasitic ones here, these ones are kind of like cannibals, and these ones are kind of like, they exsanguinate you, suck your blood dry. Then there's these other ones that are kind of like, psychic in nature. And, well, basically what we need to begin to do is disambiguate those that are part of this natural ecosystem and part of this cosmic order of being, and those that are unnatural, those that are part of the servitor races of the anti-gods that are simply entropic. So to put it in the further analogy, for those who understood the parallel so far of that which is below the ground, that you need all the ugliness down there, all the shit, the decaying matter, including carcasses and cadavers that are fed off by the gnats and the mealyworms and all of these other grotesque critters that you would never want to find on yourself when you wake up in the morning, or worse yet, inside yourself. All of these things are necessary for that growth of that which is beautiful that you eat, or that you appreciate for its aesthetics, such as blossoms. You've got that. Now that you've got that part, how are they anti-gods analogous? They are like industrial effluvia. We're talking about industrial grade toxic waste that's not part of nature. It does nothing to add to the ecosystem. It can only destroy it or mutate it into hideous, toxic malformations that do no good for the environment and do no good for you. That is the cult of the kings of Edom. That is the cult of the anti-gods. And that is what we must contend with as the ultimate enemy. My enemy is your enemy. And understand that, because the attacks on myself will come, as they do with every episode. They will come in the chat. They will come in the commentary. And it's your discernment that will save you. Now, understand, this isn't a question of damnation or salvation. This isn't a question of, oh, I'm here to help you save your soul. What it is a question of is a total annihilation. If you are damned as opposed to blessed or ascended, you're still a lucky human soul, because the damned serve a purpose. The damned are in this cosmos for a reason. And of course, there is always the recycling, the redemption that will take place through the eons, or what will feel like eternity to yourself. But if you become a servant of the anti-gods, all that awaits is annihilation of yourself. The nullity is what the cultists seek. a total annihilation which they feel is an escape from the wheel of samsara. This is a misunderstanding of what someone like a Buddhist would strive for, which is to ascend from the wheel of samsara, to sever themselves from the suffering. And in the end, one thing you might notice is that these Buddhas, the people who do attain enlightenment and do become a bodhisattva, like a Roman Catholic saint, in the end, they always come back here to help others. So you're never really escaping, are you? You may be above the pettiness. You may be above the sticks and stones or the words hurled against you. But the majority of the Buddhas are either prayed to and then, in a sense, intervene indirectly, or they return to the material world to do what they can to help the rest of mankind strive for betterness. Like a Roman Catholic saint, they're always watching over us. No one who's in this system ever really leaves. And that's fine. The system was created to persevere. But there are those who seek its destruction, and they feel that through that, they attain godhood. That if they can destroy the creation, then they are as unto gods. And hence they serve the anti-gods. These are the worst of the worst. Understand your enemy. Now, who are your allies? There are more than you know of, because you are in a matrix where you feel that humanity is the only species left alive in terms of Homo sapiens, that other hominids, that other humanoid races such as Neanderthalis, Homo neanderthalis, Cro-Magnon man, so many of these primitive peoples, the recently discovered, comparatively recently discovered Dragon Man, all of these various subspeciations, Homo floresiensis, the scientific hobbit, all of these subspeciations of humanity once existed side by side with people just like you and I. Or rather, because I'm not really like you, not really fully baseline human, being somewhat vampiroid myself, 1/4, which we could go into, more like Sean Bond and yourself. But when it comes to who you relate to, you are essentially someone who would relate more to these extinct humans than you would to, say, the ghoul or various other subspeciations of really anthropoid species. They are human-like.
Cho.
And yes, so go on. Were you going to say something, Sean? Did you want to provide some input there?
Oh, I a lot with everything you're saying, but I love your flow, so I feel bad breaking it.
Oh, go ahead,
But
please.
okay. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying because, like, I mean, in the beginning, I was like a little distraught from it and like afraid of the dark, but now I'm like, oh, because I was integrating a lot of it. And it's good to do shadow work. Otherwise, you can't grow in it as it makes you resilient. And everyone that's a human is like an angel and demon combined together, plus like a whole bunch of other species combined in our DNA record and a lot of other stuff. So we're like this super hybrid experiment that is beyond what most species here is viewing us as, because they only get a little piece of the puzzle, and even then it's like infinite potential. But yeah, and I knew you had some vamp DNA in you too, so that was cool to get confirmation. Um, yeah, and I also agree with your cosmology aspect with the tree of life, and I've tracked back that yeah, that's true with the realms are related with each other in one, like Sephiroth for the body and the fruit and the yeah also the ones for the earth as being her making a bunch of realms, nine, the nine main realms of Yggdrasil plus the heavenly realms, the quarantine realms and hell realms. I have actually a lot of experience with them. I was one time thrown into a hell realm for like compressed time for like thousands a year, and it was torture. But I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But I learned a fuck ton, and I had all that brought back with me very quickly, and it propelled me on my healing path quite a bit. Um, So I learned a whole everything they used against me. There's big predators in that hell realm.
Yes.
So I had to learn while they were fracturing me apart and all that. I had to learn how to outperform them and eventually get my parts back. But uh, everything that they threw at me, I learned, including the temporal imprison realm tech, how to manage prison realms, and then there's this cool thing to it because like Earth. She has all these planets also have consciousness. They're making a whole bunch of realms to individually put different types of forms of life in each realm, and because they can't all just interact with each other, and they have different rules, and some of them are vacation realms. This is not a vacation realm, and then and have different purposes. The quarantine realms are not always meant to be like a hellish or a quarantine realm, but get invaded to the point where it has to become that, and then they quarantine a bunch of negative species that are invading there because Earth, as an example, sees value in them and wants to graduate them through a process. Sometimes the Hell Realm gets sped up, kind of like a Narnia thing, compared to the frame of time with this realm, and so that they get graduated fast, and then they run through to other realms, and they go up the lava lamp of light and dark. So it's absolutely beautiful and how the system works. And any demon that comes at me, because they come all the time, and I have to remove them off people. They're fractured beings. They're abused. They aren't whole. They can't create their own light. Either way, they forgot how or they never knew how. Their heart's been shut down. I learned all the different systems of tech to bringing back their. Oh, this is how I do it. Like as soon as they come, you'll feel that most people that don't know that these exist, they will experience it as like big heart pressures, like drain of energy. The demons don't give a shit that you believe they exist. It doesn't matter at all. They they want you to not believe they exist so they can just drain off you. So they'll
Yes.
be draining off them, causing pain, headaches, anxiety, stress, fear. Like you'll get nightmares and visions and all this kind of other stuff, depending on the influence they want. And then they'll add to the person's shadow, making them obnoxious or a bad person, and then like building that up as a harvesting thing. Or they could drive a person to suicide, which is unfortunate. Um, there's all kinds of demons, but yeah, they're much better than the anti-gods, and I agree with you that. I'd love to talk with you. I'm gonna absolutely do that. This is how I treat them. So like anything that builds up on a person's heart wall, let's make it simple. Your goal is to make this flame in your heart that gets brighter, that will be like a compassionate, loving flame that encompasses, engulfs every one of those heart walls that builds up. The heart wall is like, just imagine time you've been the most happy and expanding in your life compared to any point that you are now. That's the difference. That's the heart wall. Those heart walls will be based on trauma, trapped emotions, attachments, entity attachment, limitation, all this kind of stuff. It will go back to a consciousness. I get up under it with loving detachment first, like pulses from the heart with each heartbeat. First, you want a loving detachment from it, but with like care and treating it kind of like a baby bird. These demons are younger than most of the humans here in whatever soul origin you want to go into, but not everyone. Some of them are really ancient, but like you, as an example, are more ancient, so you can like see them as like children of the universe, and you can get up under with love and detachment, and like I do this bubble of no time that speeds up things, gets their wholeness back, remembering who they are, that I'm ultimately them. Stop harming yourself, moral code, like natural law, a bunch of things, so that they take up on their own and take off like a baby bird, and they don't see me as an enemy anymore. And then if they're really evil, then I'll like put them into, I'll capture them, send them to a quarantine realm, and then I'll monitor their graduation so that they get through a process of becoming whole, and they eventually, see me as non-enemy because I don't like revenge seekers. But yeah, that's what I do, and it's very nice because like not everyone's like eventually after a while you learn that no one's too far gone, and every being has a purpose, and they were not just a demon before. Like, most of these spirits aren't just born demons, they become them through trauma and entanglement. And like, I like that you individuated demons from devils, because I also read that too as like one of these ancient overpowered species. um yeah, there's a lot, but go ahead and continue.
No, that was wonderful, and I appreciate that profoundly. Honestly, Sean Bond's experiences have been profound and intense, and he did bring up an ancient aspect of my personality. What he is referencing is, of course, that which is within myself, aside from my genes, which is, of course, Tavush Meliek, which is the peacock angel. And that was the result of the Night of the Broken Circle. And John Bond might be familiar with that. If you are, sir, I'll ask you to recite what you know. Do you remember?
You were like doing document destruction, and these satanic guys did a pentagram circle to get like night vision, and they made it wrong to where the pentagram was open, and then you felt the demon overtake the whole base and attach to you, or whatever angel you want to talk about. Was it pissed off? I would be. And then
Understand that.
attaching to.
Go on. I'm sorry. Go on. Go on.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, by all
um,
means, continue.
seems like you made friends with it too, right?
Well, that's so cute. That's no, thank you, Sean. No, no, you remember quite a bit to contextualize that for everyone, because that probably sounded. That's like, this is what happens when you get like fragments of something that, and it just comes out as really psychedelic, and people just say, "Wow, that's they got the colors." But they're not quite sure if the colors are part of a painting or not. So I'll put that into within the frame to reframe what Sean Bond remembers, which I'm impressed. He's very familiar with the story and knows quite a bit. Basically, when I was working at night with document destruction in the incinerator at the Presidio military base, and by the way, the entire story is available on the video titled Satan's Crusaders, which is on my YouTube channel. You just go to the Douglas Dietrich YouTube channel, and you will be able to hear the story. And so just briefly, what happened was many officers who were members of Michael Aquino's coven decided that they were going to play with magic. And they had so much experience with Michael Aquino. They felt very confident. Hubris, incredible hubris. By that I mean arrogance, stupidity, and of course, there's only so much blood you can shed in terms of casting a spell, because there's not real. Either that or you bleed out and you die, right? So you want to have enough blood left in yourself so that it's like, basically the general rule is it's like you're making a donation at a blood drive. If you're contributing your own blood to a spell, it helps to have more of you, not just for the psychic connection all of you have and the energy you can focus, but also because each one of you can donate a pint of blood. And, if there's 12 or 13 of you, it's as if you drained a full human being and drained them dry for an act of sacrifice. So they were so arrogant in their overconfidence, so intoxicated, not just on alcohol, but their own overconfidence, that they decided they were going to go for one of the mother beings of them all, the peacock angel, the earth angel, the angel of earth. So to understand that there's an entire people whose lives are focused on the worship of the peacock angel from birth to death. And these are an ethnic group, his people, the Yazidi. And the Yazidi are in Iraq. So understand, this was one of the reasons for the invasion of Iraq. This was to ultimately exterminate the Yazidi people. In terms of the Yazidi people, everyone in the Southwest Asia, what Americans call the Middle East, understands them to be devil worshippers, the worshippers of what Muslims feel to be Satan himself. And again, this is a more watered down or two-dimensional mythology that has been subsumed into a major world religion. So in terms of Christianity, they had their own political reasons for turning gods into devils. Understand that the original god of the Europeans, who were pagan, the original god of the Europeans, whether they were the descendants of the modern day, or rather postmodern Wiccans or witches, or the descendants of the postmodern heathen or neo-pagans, the original Europeans worshipped the horned god. And the horned god of the Black Forest, of the Germanic and Teutonic peoples, whom the Romans never conquered, whom the Romans could only go so far into Germania. And when they encountered the Germani tribes, the Roman legions were defeated. And this defeat was profound. They later on tried to avenge their defeat and expand it into Barbaria, or the Germanic regions of Europa. But they only got so far. And to put Germany in perspective for people, modern day Germany, think of a nation that's at the direct center of Europe, the true center of Europe, the heart of Europe, and it is divided in a sense into four. It's divided into four in the sense vaguely reminiscent of the Allied division of Europe or Germania, Germany, into four quarters after World War II. It's divided by history. And in terms of one aspect of history that people would be more familiar with, that would be the aspect of history of Germany divided by between East and West. That East and West division between what was formerly the German Democratic Republic, or Communist East Germany, and the Federal Republic of Germany, or West Germany, that Germany had the same division. They simply divided it along the same line as the division between the Christian Empire of Charlemagne, of the Holy Roman Empire, and that which was not Christianized. That was the original division of Germany, East and West. Charlemagne was the original founding father of the European dynasties. And Charlemagne's descent was rationalized as a kingship. He held what was called the divine right of kings. And people hear that term and it's meaningless to people today. What does that mean? The divine right of kings. It's basically not simply a man saying force majeure, which means rule by force. It means that he has come to rule over you because he is godly. Now, that doesn't mean he's just a Christian or a believer in God. It means via the Merovingian bloodline, he is a direct descendant of Christ himself. So when Christ actually married Mary Magdalene, had a child, and this child was the father of kings in Europe. The kings of Europe were making their claim to divine right of kingship and married amongst each other to keep their bloodlines pure, because their own belief was that they were descendants of the Godhead, of Christ. In other words, descendants of God. This means that they are like Heraclesian in nature. Hercules was half human, half divine, the son of a human woman.
When I
Was
track
that?
his DNA,
Yeah,
his DNA got around a lot.
yeah. Well, Hercules, yeah, was by that you're talking about how he spread his own seed around quite a bit, yes?
Well, like, not just him, but like his closest descendants. Yeah, they had a bunch. At least with what I track back. Yeah, but don't let me interrupt you. But yeah,
Yeah.
I read a lot of demigod DNA lineages, and it's really fun because there's like authority and a mystery school within a lot of empowering stuff, and like a direct line of communication. And usually, sometimes they'll know about the deities will know about you when you're born, so it's like pretty interesting.
Yeah. No, what's important about that is there is far more documentary evidence of Hercules than there is of Jesus Christ. There were far more people speaking of him when he was alive than people spracketh of the Christ when he was among us. Heracles was quite real, and he was half human, half divine, as was the Christ. So in that sense, these lineages are divine. So when the kings were making their claim, and the first among them as a European, identifying with that peninsular, that superpeninsular subcontinent. Europe's not really a continent, it is a subcontinent of Eurasia, but it's superpeninsular, meaning it is a peninsula with its own peninsulas. The Europeans were, before they were Europeans, were basically pagan tribes, particularly dominated by the Germanics. And Germany was divided in half by Charlemagne, who Christianized the western half. The other example predating that most people are unfamiliar with, was the division between North and South. Most people, of course, understand that Germany is predominantly Protestant. And this is what made Adolf Hitler so unusual, was because he was Roman Catholic, and that's because he was Austrian. And where was it that the German people of Austria became divided from the German people of Germany itself? Well, that's a kind of more nuanced division. Basically, Austrians are German hillbillies. And they were able to start their own empire, which was very Roman Catholic, and go south. Basically, what they had was considered at the time an Asian empire. Don't forget the Ottoman Empire of the Turks thrust deep into Europe. So every inch of land the Austrians won from the Turks was basically Europeanizing Asian territory. So when it came to the other division, that's subtle but no less traumatic, the German form of intergenerational trauma that many indigenous Americans or Black Americans suffer from. There's a division that the Romans created, the Rome that they conquered into Bavaria, into the southern areas of Germany, was walled off from the rest of free Germany by the Limes Wall. That Limes Wall was no less dividing than Hadrian's Wall in England. Though people know of Hadrian's Wall, most nobody knows of the Limes Wall. But that which was below the Limes Wall in Germany became Roman Catholic, and that which was above the Limes Wall became Protestant. So you have this division between Christian and pagan, Protestant and Catholic, in Germania being divided into those four quarters culturally. And the original god of the German peoples was the horned god, the Aurork of the Black Forest. And this was Wotan. And Woden, which became known in the Norse culture as Odin, Woden was originally as much animal as he was human, kind of a Greek type of satyr kind of perception. Cloven hooves, and the great stag antlers that were a sign of his virility. And this horned god of the Black Forest, when the Roman Catholic Church conquered much of Europe, understand it was a process that took 1,000 years. The original Christ was roaming among us in year one. We start the calendar based on his appearing among us. The Christian calendar starts with year one, and it wasn't until the year 1000 AD that the last European country, Scandinavian Denmark, converted to Christianity. It took 1,000 years for Europe to become Christendom. And that was the original identity that they held before they thought of themselves as European. And until that period of time, during that 1,000 years, the church was demonizing Wotan, the god of the Black Forest. They used his image to project their Christian concept of a devil. Of course, the very word Satan comes from Sethen, the original god of the desert of Egypt, the god of plagues and pestilential foreigners and darkness, blood and war, the god who fought with Horus for Cairo. Cairo, the capital of Egypt, simply means place of battle. That was the great battle between Horus and Sethen, where Sethen was defeated and expelled. That was the original Satan. Yet Sethen, the original god that was this jackal-headed, diabolic entity, suddenly was Roman Catholicized in image, kind of like Disneyfying something, and they changed his physical manifestation, his visualization concept. They reconceptualized him as Wotan, the god of the Black Forest, this satirical, as in satyr, this goat cloven hooved entity with the stag antlers, the very picture of virility and fertility. They said that's the devil, and of course he's hung like a horse. And then that's sinful too, because that's hypersexualized. So all of that is where your European image of the devil comes from. Get rid of that. That's not your enemy. So in that sense, when you think of this diabolicization of this entity to propagandize on behalf of a religious church, and the rise of the church was coincident with the decline of magic. Magic was rife among the pagans, and the practice of magic declined and went underground and became the purview of the witches, whom the church then hunted down in a gynocide, a female genocide, a genocide of female practitioners of the craft. All of this is needs to be put into perspective so that you better understand your cosmology. So when it comes to this divine right of kingship, where the kings were coming from, how your European culture was born, this division of Germany into the four quarters, and your better understanding of history, your ability to contextualize it, so to understand that when it comes to sacred symbols such as the Hakenkreuz, the hooked cross, the swastika, that was the original cross that Constantine of the Roman Empire saw in the heavens when he received the voice of God that told him, under this sign, conquer. That was the original Christian cross. When Constantine Christianized the Roman Empire, created Byzantium, the Eastern Roman Empire, it was the swastika that was the symbol of the Roman legions. It was the Hakenkreuz, the hooked cross. That is your original Christian cross. That is your ward against evil, the ward against the anti-gods. And that was, of course, the warrior culture of the Romans that spread Christianity. Christianity was spread by war. So it is a warrior religion. Understand that if you truly want to be a Christian. And understand that you cannot be a true Christian unless you understand it as a warrior religion. So with that being stated, I'll tell you the truth, I really forget my original train of thought where I was trying to explain, the kind of quartering of Germany, a crucifixion of that nation into four quarters, the difference between the Merovingian bloodline, the divine right of kings. We were talking about the genetic bloodlines. We were talking about, you can help me out here, Sean Bond, and help me free associate my way back on track. But you can start by just telling us your own impressions of what I said and what it reminds you of, and that'll probably help.
Oh yeah, I watched a bunch of your interviews on the deep secret history and the cult of the Nazis, and I went one of the your information helped inspire me when we went to Germany, and we visited is it Wardenschaft Tower or whatever. It's the one with the um, black sun
Yes,
in the
yes, yes.
bottom, and the guy did a bunch of rituals there. We went there and help because it seemed to be on a big ley line and place of power, and
It
like
is.
we helped because I also get contacted by Odin. He sends a bunch of like ravens and crows and stuff, and when he like gives you messages, it's pretty nice. Um, and I like the realm travel is one of my other fun things I like to activate with people. And a lot of people have like different species from the realm, the nine primary realms they talk about. There's way more Earth has. She's like a really magnificent creative realms, but also the other ones, other planets make their realms and they like to share them and branch them off of each other, and they can bilocate onto each other and then share and have like portal bleed over in travel between them. It's pretty interesting when like some of the realms are like in destruction, or like I read a bunch of things in Sirius. Went through the realms of Sirius A and B, went through a bunch of destruction, and then they adopted. Well, they were adopting a bunch of species there, and then some of those species they adopted were highly targeted, and then a bunch of multidimensional predators followed them and then started doing destructions, and then they brought them here, and a lot of the DNA that we have, like I also know about your concept of a lot of the ETs being origined here, which I agree, because I see a lot of time travel, and a lot of them want to get in the beginning of the game here, but also I go into like there's some species that are older than this universe in concept. So and Earth is also older, and so is a lot. Most people I read human are older than this universe, but in spirit, not
There
DNA.
we are. I remember my train of thought now. Thank you. You can go on if you wish.
Thank you. I'm glad you remember. Yeah, and then yeah, I loved you going in the anti-gods versus the Norse gods, and I wanted to go to Germany to empower that. I also found out there's a pyramid in Germany dedicated towards Hela, and like there's some misinterpretations of history with her, because she seems to be a nicer god in the original iterations of her
Yes.
deity structure, and like it goes along with like a word holly and some other like an earth deity, and she was like worshipped and stuff, and it was a nice pyramid. And I went to some star forts and some other stuff, but oh yeah, so I also agree with you on the anti-god stuff, which I'd love to talk more on, because they're the ones that are trying to stop us right now, so might as well expose them. And we'll I'll team up with you for protection in this, and for those in the audience. The So this is what I read as well with that. I read a whole bunch of dark sorcerers try to do rituals to open up portals, and most of the ones that are successful are usually through getting authority from authority holders on this end of the realm, and in like whatever side they're trying to open up. I mostly have seen the ones that are opening up now all around the earth, connecting to hell realms, and they're like bleeding over as a way for some of the demons to like get through. And I'm not like against demons, like what you're
Per
going
se.
into. Yeah, I see them as a necessary
Necessary evil.
person I'd rather have here than that, but they also get kind of like incurred and sometimes whispered into their ear, and division is sowed. And so I want to branch the sides of light and dark, and it's like darkness isn't evil. But it is much easier manipulated into evil, because it is not as likely to master moral code and the natural law. But if it does, it can, and it become like positive darkness. It's like a unicycle on a tightrope walk while dodging gale force winds, but you can do it, and it's wonderful if they do, because then you're very empowered, and balancing light and dark is a wonderful spectrum. Evil seems to be perpetuating in like a monkey wrench, and trying to pit us all light and dark against each other in a unnecessary way, instead of like ever expanding evolution that like challenges each other, like chess players on the board, to like intensify growth beyond, if we were not in some if we were boring like in the heaven realms. But not to put them down, but like, yeah, I agree with you on that.
Yes.
They're mostly for like healing, and if you want to make an amazing place and a VIP club, and like make creations, and you if you want to generate super natural abilities and you don't want it to get fucked with, that's where you go. Um, and then they try to flow a river of effect into the other realms to help them grow, but in a safe space. So it's like
Yes.
that safe spacey
Yes.
thing.
I like it.
But yeah, the real game is being here because they don't have as much effect as if you're here. And it's immensely growing process if you're able to change or heal yourself in a human body here. You can achieve a greater level of love than anywhere. Well, this is what I read. One of the biggest purposes for being in a human body in this realm is like we have all this genetic potential in emotional body to experience a new level of love that's never been experienced before, as beyond any potential of any species. Most of us has never even gotten close to it, but we have the potential. And it like love expands into every ability. So it's pretty powerful to change everything.
So
Um,
yes, and
but
and yeah, thank you, bless you, and that's beautiful as always, Sean. Thank you for sharing that. So when it came to certain aspects of what we were talking about, Sean was bringing up the Velvelshire Castle, and of course that is Wewelsburg. And in terms of Wewelsburg Castle of the SS, the Schutzstaffel, Heinrich Himmler's castle, where he, of course, had his own roundtable of the Knights of Black Camelot. These were, of course, the order of Die Schwarzen Corps, the Black Corps, the knights consecrated by Adolf Hitler himself. And Wewelsburg Castle was where Michael Aquino went in 1982 and 83 to conduct a ritual overnight from October 19th on my birthday eve day into October 20th on my actual birthday. He did this so that he could not only in his objective bind myself, but also try to prevent the original old gods, the elder gods, the Norse gods, from returning into this realm. Instead, empowering his anti-gods. Michael Aquino was anti-Nazi because he was antithetical to the swastika, the Hakenkreuz, and all that holds the anti-gods at bay. In terms of the entire purpose of this kind of demonization of certain gods, understand that this is the way in which churches control and ultimately subdue or suppress the religion which they are replacing. That's what happened with Tibetan Buddhism. The original gods of Tibet were not Buddhist. They were not Buddhistic at all. They were Bon, of the Bon religion, the original Mongolian religion. The religion of the Mongols was Bon. And I actually had the honor of meeting and dealing with certain Mongols in my lifetime, and they were still practicing the Bon religion, and that's spelled Bon. People can look that up, and it is what the Tibetans Buddhists violently suppress and have demonized. So when you take a look at Tibetan Buddhist art and you see those demons, those are really ancient gods of Bon that have been demonized by the Tibetan Church of the Dalai Lama. So they practice their own suppression of a religion, and then in turn are suppressed by the Chinese communists. There's something karmic in that, but we won't go too deep into that irony. That being said, when it comes to the original gods that get suppressed and Wewelsburg Castle and what Michael Aquino was doing, this is what brings us back
you
to.
you celebrate when he died?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, celebrate when he died. You know, that's youth. You had to ask. The First off, yeah, I'll continue with what I'm going to say. I'll put it this way: it was like barely a blip because his cult still functions in so many ways, and he is effectively still alive for all intents and purposes. For those of you who don't understand, Michael Aquino, and remind me to get back to the Peacock Angel. This is what I was trying to say with the comparison of Wotan and the demonization of a god. The Peacock Angel is a god that is demonized, so they're therefore perceived to be Satan himself by the major world religion of Islam. So in terms of, we'll get back to that, but just a little thing about Michael Aquino here. He established the Temple of Set. He originally converted to Satanism. Now, I was born in the year 1966. In that year, 1966, on June 6th, 1966, was when Star Trek was released as a syndicated franchise series in Canada. It was released in Canada before it was released in the United States. Most people don't know that. And that was on June 6th, 1966. That's important because Gene Roddenberry was a big influence in my life personally, had actually spoken with me telephonically with some extended conversations because he had a close connection with the Presidio Military Base Library. And he, of course, had created his character Spock independently, but I very much relate to the character because Spock is, of course, the character which originally Gene Roddenberry was trying to portray as an allegory for basically China, or rather free China. And there's even in one of the original episodes where Captain Kirk and Spock go back in time. That was The Gateway at the Edge of Forever, or something like that was the name of that episode. And it also stars that famous British actress of Jewish descent. I can't remember her name now, but she played in Dynasty years later. My father had a crush on her. But in terms of her being in that episode and all that, Captain Kirk does say that trying to cover up for Spock's alienness, he says he's Chinese. He's trying to tell the police he's Chinese. But the reality is, for those who don't know, Spock's Vulcan lineage, most people do know this, was related to the Romulans. They're genetically indistinct. They're ethnically the same, but they're divided by politics. And the Romulans were meant to represent communist China, and the Vulcans were meant to represent free China. They were supposed to be the original thrust of the entire series, that the main adversary was supposed to be the Romulans, because it was the Vulcan intervention for humanity that helped humanity progress beyond the barbarism it had descended into after atomic warfare, and recover a civilization to the point where it reached the stars, all through the Vulcan intervention. So the Vulcans basically save humanity, and they have their religion, or their philosophy of logic, called Kolinar, that was basically based off Confucianism, which is the state religion of Taiwan, the nation in which I was born. So this is all part of Gene Roddenberry's own World War II experience, when he was a bomber in the Pacific and had one time been ordered to bomb Taiwan, the island on which I was born. And for those of you who don't know, don't take my word for it, look it up yourself. You can find that Taiwan, an island almost the size of Japan itself, was known even in World War II as an unsinkable aircraft carrier. The majority of Japanese air power was merging out of Taiwan. That was their major aero base. And yet the Americans throughout World War II, for all intents and purposes, never bombed Taiwan. And the reason why was the men who were sent to bomb Taiwan suffered what they said was hallucinations, or delusions that rendered them unfit for combat. Basically, the men claimed that they saw a woman in the sky catching their bombs. Therefore, very few of the bombs that were dropped even reached the ground of Taiwan. This woman was the guardian of Taiwan, Matsu, the goddess of the sea. And so her protection of Taiwan was absolute. All of that continues through today. And so Gene Roddenberry saw Matsu. He saw her catching the bombs his crew was dropping. He was one of the pilots, or the pilot, of the bomber crew that was attempting to bomb Taiwan. One of the few attempts. All of them were considered failures, and the majority of the men were institutionalized. Gene Roddenberry escaped institutionalization by saying he didn't see her when all the other men claimed they did. And so he was rendered still fit for combat. That's how he basically came through the war with his reputation intact. But he had seen something that changed his life, and that's why he created the character Spock, because he knew the spirit of the Taiwanese people, the Free Chinese, and disambiguated them from the communists on the mainland via the Romulans and the Vulcans. And he felt the Taiwanese would someday save America, and therefore portrayed the Vulcans as saving humanity. This is something important. And of course, when it comes to Wewelsburg Castle and Aquino's death, let's just put it this way. Around that time, 1966, that I was born, aside from Star Trek airing as well, Michael Aquino, within, well, first, the man who started the first Church of Satan, the mages, Anton Szandor LaVey, a man of Jewish descent, decided he was going to take the philosophy of Ayn Rand, who herself was a Russian Jewess. And Ayn Rand was trying to create an atheistic capitalism that would be able to defeat atheistic communism. Now, understand that, again, communism itself sources from Karl Marx, whose real name, and don't take my word for it, you can look this up yourself, was Moses Mordecai Levi. And so he was also someone who had the rabbi is also a name, by the way. It's not just a position. He also had the name of rabbi that was inserted as a fourth name at some point. But with Karl Marx changing his name for the sake of marketing, which sounds rather anti-communist, but that's how he got the idea out. Geez, you okay there, Sean?
Yeah, I'm just, if I do this is mostly because something's trying to stop us from talking about something, and I'm like, okay, I like to track down exactly what they want me to not talk about and then talk about it, but don't mind me.
But by the way, just to reassure you, it does indicate we've got the red button up. It says Sean is recording the call, so we're recording, just so everybody knows. And we were concerned about that earlier. But with the Rabbi Moses Mordecai Levi, Karl Marx creating communism as an ideology, and Ayn Rand, whose family was devastated financially and economically by communism, emigrating to the United States and creating objectivism, which is atheistic capitalism, that gets rid of all guilt, all sense of ethics, all sense of anything good or decent. She was creating what she thought was a ruthless capitalism that could beat communism because it got rid of a belief in God. So it was the Jewish individual named Anton Szandor LaVey who took that philosophy and rendered it theological in nature. He combined it with magic and created modern Satanism. And he founded the first Church of Satan. But understand that the Magus Anton Szandor LaVey, in taking the logical step from communism to objectivism to Satanism, he also was very much protesting against the fact that churches were free of social responsibility in the sense that churches in America are not taxed. So the Magus Anton Szandor LaVey was a proud taxpayer. He made certain that his church was recognized as a church, but nevertheless paid taxes. That being said, the first person who converted to Satanism that was really famous was Michael Aquino. In terms of, well, you know, that's unfair. That's not true, really. Jane Mansfield was a Satanist. Sammy Davis Jr. was a Satanist. These were all people who converted to Anton Szandor LaVey's church, the first Church of Satan in San Francisco. But, Michael Aquino, he was the first one who really took it beyond just objectivist magic. And he said, I want to make something really serious with this. Here's the difference. The Magus Anton Szandor LaVey said Satanism is basically atheistic, like Buddhism. For those of you who don't know, Buddhism is not a religion originally, it's a philosophy. The original Buddha was a warrior of the Aryan caste of India, and he was a combat veteran who suffered from severe post-traumatic stress disorder. And as a man who had spent his life as a warrior killing, the great Buddha himself suffered a multitude of assassination attempts until one of them finally succeeded in killing him. He actually was assassinated. So the great Buddha, the original Buddha, was telling people to give up a belief in the Vedic Hindu gods. He was advocating a peace without gods. This was originally an atheistic philosophy. It became religionized as it progressed throughout Asia. And by the time it reached the Far East, Buddha himself was a god. And then it was a formal religion. And then you believed in the Buddha as the god. And the other Buddhas were also gods. So sometimes men attain an apotheosis, meaning godhood, after death, like Caesar did. So when it comes to what I'm saying about Magus Anton Szandor LaVey, he was saying Satanism was like Buddhism originally, atheistic philosophical practice, that you are practicing Satanism by believing in your own ability to attain godhood. There is no God and there is no Satan. Satan rather is a tulpa, basically a meme, a kind of thematic by which you render godhood within yourself by becoming Satan, becoming God. This is his philosophy. And Michael Aquino said, no, I want a theistic Satanism in which Satan is outside of me and someone I can pray to and bargain with. And so he formed the schismatic Temple of Seth, and the Temple of Seth being based on the original Satan of the ancient Egyptians. So when Michael Aquino did this, he also established pylons, as he called them, in England. These are branch churches. That England was the easiest because of Aleister Crowley and the tradition of the Hellfire Club in England, and the fact that they had once ruled a good part of the world and the seas based on their satanic empire. And they also took a nation and turned it into four quarters. They divided India into four by growing the Great Hedge of India. For those of you who don't know, the English live in this horrible climate where it's very hard to grow anything, and yet they've become primary hedge cultivators. And the English hedgerows, when taken and transplanted in subtropical India, or rather fully tropical India, they basically mutate and become enormous. They become giant bramble bushes that are effectively impassable. For those of you who find this hard to believe, take a look at the Americans trying to invade France in World War II. They encountered, and you can look this up yourself, what they called hedgerow hell, where General Erwin Rommel had ordered all of the troops prior D-Day to prepare in-depth defense. And the in-depth defense that the troops carried out was hollowing out hedgerows and basically placing machine gun nests within hedgerows. So they were perfectly camouflaged and firing out from hedgerows, and that and other booby traps. It was very similar to Vietnam. The Americans were chewed to pieces. They lost far more men in depth in France amongst the hedgerows than they ever did at D-Day. And this is why they developed tanks with these giant pitchfork assemblies. You can look that up. And their Shermans used these to uproot hedgerows. They were just using their tanks to uproot these hedgerows. Now, that's in Europe. By the time you get down to India, these hedgerows grow to the size of walls. They are far taller than people. and they mutate into mutathorn bramble bushes that simply overrun the environment. So the British generated a Great Wall of India based on hedgerows that divided it into four quarters. They crucified the subcontinent, and therefore they could decide who got to eat, who got the food, who got deprived of it. This made it far easier to control the population and starve out an entire quarter of the subcontinent whenever they had to suppress rebellion. All of this ultimately killed millions and millions of people. Over the years of the Raj, 100 million Asian Indians died because of controlled British starvation in each of these quarters. And all of this sacrifice fed the Hellfire Club, which ran England. So they had a long tradition of Satanism, and their Satanism was taken advantage of by Michael Aquino, who established pylons of the Temple of Set in England. And all of this was something that was the reason why J.K. Rowling's, who wrote Harry Potter, is a member of the Temple of Set, an acolyte of Michael Aquino. So Michael Aquino ultimately moved to England. He lived in Scotland. He lived in a castle in Scotland for years. And he personally was in communication with J.K. Rowling, and J.K. Rowling, who wrote Harry Potter, that is simply a perversion of the original Asian Indian Vedic name, Hari, as in Hare Krishna, Putar. Hari Putar means the son of God. So Harry Potter is very real in its occult magical formulary, in the sense that J.K. Rowling's got it straight from Michael Aquino. He was the occult advisor and consultant for Hari Putar, the son of God. So in her book, she purposefully honors Michael Aquino through the character of Voldemort. And Voldemort, of course, when he dies, subdivides his soul into 7 or 8 entities to maintain his existence in the material realm. This is exactly what Michael Aquino has done. So Michael Aquino is still very much alive. He's simply inhabiting other bodies. This is what's called a Horcrux in the Hari Putar, the Son of God novels, the Harry Potter novels. And this Horcrux is a very real magical practice. So when Michael Aquino died, he didn't die at all. So there was no celebration on my part because, as I said, what's there to celebrate? Hence the roll of the eyes. I hope that puts it in context now, my attitude. And as we turn back towards the Yazidi people, the demonization of Tavush Maliek, understand that Tavush Maliek, the peacock angel, Lucifer, is an ancient god that the divinity created to lord over the earth itself. He is a fell angel. He fell from heaven because of his pride. He would not bow towards man. When Lucifer, the bringer of light, the angel of light, would not bow towards man, and he fell to earth in his pride, he was essentially made the lord of the earth. But the only way he could reign as lord of the earth was to have his own people. And he created his own humans. If God can do it, so can I. The people he created were the Yazidi people. The Yazidi people are the people of the peacock angel. Therefore, if someone finds out about the Yazidi people and says, I'm impressed by the peacock angel, I'm overwhelmed by his beauty, he has every right to be the proudest being on earth, and you wish to join, it doesn't work like that. You can't convert to the Luciferan religion of the Yazidi people. You have to be born into it. With myself, it was different. There are exceptions to every rule. And the exception was based on my possession by the peacock angel because of a group of arrogant drunkards who decided that they were going to play with magic and were so intoxicated with what they had already learned that they felt that they could handle summoning the peacock angel himself. Now, understand, our man Sean Bond asked, was he pissed? Because I would be pissed. Understand this. They're always pissed. Everything that's summoned is pissed. This is something that you as a human being must learn to understand. You don't know how lucky you are. As a human being, the only summonings you can ever get are from a court. And I know that can be bad. And you may never want to get those summonings. And that can be stressful, and that's its own problem. But compared to that, that's nothing compared to how you would feel if you suddenly were plucked out from your dimension and suddenly found yourself bound in a circle in some idiot's living room or garage or some abandoned basement or barracks or bunker, and they're asking you to do something for them. How would you feel to be plucked out of wherever you were at, and then somebody wants something from you? There is nothing on earth that would probably piss you off more. This is why you're bound. This is why whatever summon has to be bound, because whatever summon is going to be royally pissed. But as a human, you will never suffer that. You are one of the only entities in the cosmos that is immune to that horror. And for that, you can thank the gods for your incarnation as a mere human being. Everything else in terms of vibratory levels that are just a bit into the other world, just a bit between the veil that divides this world from theirs, is summonable. And people summon them and piss them off. So when you conduct a summoning, there has to be the binding. And of course, you want to contain that which you're summoning as if it were nuclear energy. Understand that what you're doing when you're operating a nuclear power plant, you've got this engine of immense power that you're containing, because if that breaks loose, you're fucked and everything around you is fucked. That's what happens when you summon an entity of any power. Well, of any worthy power, unless you're like doing something completely stupid and you're summoning imps or, cosmic mosquitoes and shit, which is what most people wind up summoning because they're idiots and they don't know what they're doing and they're just playing with magic. And you get a kid and they're doing the Dungeons and Dragons bullshit and they're just like playing around. This is usually what comes at them. And they're lucky that it's just that. And this is because they're not sacrificing a human being, or let alone a worthy human being. They're just like maybe killing a cat or something. That's bad. Don't do that. Or they're killing rats or something. And, that's even if they get that far. But what these men did was they took their own blood, each one of them a pint, and there were 12 of them. And each one of them took a pint and contributed it to the cause. And they drew a blood circle to contain their summoning of the peacock angel, Tavush Mariek. And so they decided that they wanted to be able to see in the dark as a predator of the night, so that they could test out these new silencers. There was some brand spanking new silencers that were made for automatic weapons for the military by Department of Defense contract. For those of you who don't know, back in the bad old days, and it's still the case today in many cases, silencers were a one-shot deal. It was basically, you had a silencer and one bullet goes through it, and that basically blows all the baffles inside the silencer. So you get one shot, and it's usually after that you throw away the silencer. And you might have a series of silencers if you're trying to fire several shots, but you can imagine the problem of screwing that on. There's still no such thing as a silencer for shotguns until recently. Someone finally designed a silencer for a shotgun, but I believe, again, it's one use and disposable. In the old days, trying to silence a shotgun, they would make something out of paper mache, and it was good for only one shot. But when it comes to shotguns for an automatic weapon, that's extremely advanced, and in those days didn't exist until there was this Department of Defense contract. It existed after that, but until that point, they had some of the first of these things. They wanted to test them out, and they wanted to do it at night. So they decided, let's be able to see in the dark. Let's summon the Peacock Angel himself to give us this ability. So when they summoned him, I was working the incinerator, and that's when the world around me changed and the world inside me changed. The incinerator is incredibly hot, you can imagine. And of course, you're sweating, you're grimy, and you don't want to go near the flames other than as close as you can get to shove in the documents that you're working with, the crates, etc. I began to realize I wasn't feeling any heat, even though the incinerator was on full blast. I really felt cold. Suddenly, I felt very cold. The cold that I felt was the cold you feel when you get a blood transfusion from a frozen plasma bag that's just been defrosted, and you get the cold blood coming in you, and it hurts like a bitch. It is burning in its coldness. It is excruciatingly painful. I felt like that through my entire body, that cold burn. And I felt no longer able to empathize. Probably the most painful thing of all was the hole in my soul where I could no longer, like our man Sean Bond there with his cat, if you feel that warmth of that cat, you respond to it with a human warmth. You respond to it with a human empathy. You sense and you respond. If that cat had jumped on my shoulders at that time, I would have felt none of its warmth, and I would have had none of the response of empathy that is evoked by that warmth. Am I coherent? You understand what I'm saying? All of
Yeah,
that was
I
gone.
experienced similar stuff with the demon. It's like for me, it was like I don't know, in like Harry Potter, you reference as an example, the Dementors and the like ice coming in and forming and getting me to forget everything around me that would empower me. It felt like a void, and like a fire inside me was being hushed out. My ability to create love and all that was being hushed out, and then eventually like overwhelm and like torturous pain. But yeah, do you oh, and my cat would just freak out and hiss at me at the time.
Yes.
Yeah,
At that
you
time,
can see.
yes. Go on. Yes, thank you.
Um,
Thank you. Go
you
on.
still did you get your empathy back?
I got the majority of it back. Something was, as I said, if people want the full story, you can see it at Satan's Crusaders on my own YouTube channel, Douglas Dietrich YouTube channel. But what happened was something was forever taken from me. It could have been a happy memory. It could have been basically the fact that we had a something that made me more fully capable of communing with other humans. Something was forever taken. There's always that gap, that hole in my heart. But at the same time, something was in its place, and that was an element of the Peacock Angel that will forever be there. This is why when I visited Iraq, and this was in 1980, oh God, 88. In 1988, I spent my summer vacation in the first Gulf War. For those of you who don't get it, uh, Americans have no concept of fucking history. All they think of is what's American is history, and so they use the terms Gulf War One and Gulf War Two, and that's bullshit. The Operation Desert Storm, which I participated in, was Gulf War fucking Two. It was not the first Gulf War. The first Gulf War was the Iran-Iraq conflict that lasted 8 fucking years. So the original Gulf War was something that I was a part of in its last year, the Iran-Iraq conflict, as a propagandist. And that was because the Iraqis were recruiting commercial illustrators to conduct a propaganda campaign for them so that they could appeal to the West and have the West understand that they were fighting on behalf of the West, that they were saving the West's ass from the fundamentalist Iranians who wanted to overrun all of Southwest Asia. And at that time, Saddam Hussein was the great defender of the West. He wanted the world to understand this. I never met him personally, but I was flown by the Iraqis through the Iraqi consulate in San Francisco on contract during my summer vacation, and helped at that point to bring an end, in a sense, to the Gulf conflict at that time, Gulf War I. I later participated in Operation Desert Storm, Gulf War II, and of course, the Gulf War that was the invasion of Iraq itself, that was the third Gulf War. That's Gulf War III. So if you want to look at it as a purely American experience, you would say Bush War I and Bush War II. Operation Desert Storm being the war of Bush the senior, and the invasion of Iraq being the war of Bush the junior. Bush War I and Bush War II, if you want to disambiguate it from a purely Amerocentric perspective. But such being said, when I was in Iraq, aside from so much else that I saw there, I visited the Yazidi people, the worshippers of Satan, as the Muslims view them. So to the Muslims, the peacock angel is Satan, because he's Lucifer. But that's a conflation of two very separate entities. And the reality that is that Lucifer is the fell angel, the earth angel, the Lord of this realm, and God is the Lord of the heavens, but Lucifer rules the earth. And his people are the Yazidi, and the Satan is the fell angel who fell further than Lucifer, fell further than most into the pit. So when you come to the concept of Lucifer, the peacock angel, understand that he is, in a very real sense, everyone's God, kind of. He's the God of this earth. And earth, just so people understand it, is from the Germanic goddess Erde. Erde was the mother of Thor, and she was the daughter of Nott, the daughter of night. She was the mother of Donar, the original German name for what became anglicized as Thor. So Earth is the only planet in our solar system named after a non-Greco-Roman deity. All other planets in our solar system are named after Greco-Roman deities. If we were to use that same Latinization of Greek gods that is used to name the rest of the planets, such as Venus instead of Aphrodite, Mars instead of Ares, Mercury instead of Hermes, then Earth would be named Tellus, Tellus, and everyone on Earth would be not an Earthling, but a Tellurian. But we don't use that because Earth is Midgard. It is man's home, Mannheim. And Earth is therefore the only planet in the solar system named after a Germanic goddess, the Earth Titaness, rather than a Greco-Roman divinity as all the other planets are. Very important. So in that sense, we're all Earthlings. When it comes to Mother Earth and the peacock angel, his people are the Yazidi. But when I showed up among them, visiting them while I was propagandizing for Saddam Hussein in the first Gulf War, the Yazidi people accepted me as one of their own because they sensed Tavush Maliek, the peacock angel, in myself. They even offered me one of their daughters' hand in marriage, which I did not take. She was legally underage. Not that that would have stopped me, but all that being said, it was just I was not ready for marriage. But aside from that, it would have entailed so many other responsibilities. But the reason why was they could foresee their own tribulations in the future, that with the fall of Saddam Hussein, that their problems were just beginning. They could foresee his fall, and they could foresee ultimately ISIS. And ISIS was created, by the way, for those of you who don't know, Michael Aquino wrote the book Mind War. And when he wrote the book Mind War about psychological warfare, the man who wrote the preface to that book, the man who wrote the preface to it, was also its secret co-author, was General Paul Vallely, who was a co-religionist, a fellow Satanist of the Temple of Satan. And Paul Vallely has gone on record to say, I created ISIS. General Paul Vallely created ISIS specifically to exterminate the Yazidi people. And the logic was that if they killed the Yazidi people, exterminated the race of the peacock angel, Tavush Maliek, that he would lose his tether and all of Earth would be unbalanced and fall into chaos. All of this was their intent. And for those of you who don't understand the true evil of these worshippers of the Edomites, the AntiGods, the kings of Edom, then you don't understand the nature of what we're fighting. So Tavush Maliek, the peacock angel, Lucifer, the god of this world, is on your side. The Yazidi people must be protected at all costs. They have suffered enormously throughout their existence, one of the most persecuted peoples on earth. Their god is demonized into Shaitan, Satan, by the Muslims, in the sense that the Roman Catholic Church has demonized, Satanized Wotan, the god of the Black Forest of the original German peoples. So that's the track that I had lost, but I regained it thanks to our circuitous adventures together with Sean Bond. Tell you what, Sean, give me a short break. I'll suck some tea here while you take over for a bit and share some of your wisdom in regard to that with...
I'll take a break too. I'll use the restroom and all that.
Okay, so Joe, we'll stop recording for about how many minutes you want to give? 5, 10 minutes? How much?
Yeah, sure. 10 minutes is fine.
10 minutes? Okay, so all right. So let's give it a break for 10 minutes.
If we both get back, it's if we
Yeah,
both
when
get
we
back,
both get back is when we start again. Okay, yeah. Well, it's 5:22 p.m. right now, so we'll be back about 5:30ish. You know. Okay. About 8:30 your.